Night mode. There's something about a fire in the woods. It turns grown men into storytellers. Maybe it's the way the flames dance. Or maybe it's the sound. That slow, lazy crackle. The sharp pop when sap hits the heat. The rhythm feels like it matches your own heartbeat. Darren had been out here more times than he could count. He knew that once the fire burned low, the stories started getting taller. Not lies meant to hurt. The kind of stories that make you sound braver. The fish this big stories. The bear came within 10 feet stories. The swear to God I saw a UFO stories. This trip wasn't anything special. Just Darren, Kevin, and Nick. Mid-October. The leaves more orange than green. The air sharp and cold, smelling faintly of oak smoke drifting from miles away. They picked a small clearing, half a mile off the trail. Far enough to be alone. Close enough to find the car without getting lost. The fire was doing its job. Throwing tall shadows up the pine trees. Shadows that twitched and shifted, almost alive. Kevin poked at the logs with a stick. His headlamp flipped up on his cap, shining like a little white halo. Nick scrolled on his phone. The screen's glow made him look washed out, like a faded photograph. No signal, Nick muttered. Darren grinned. Good, that's the point, we're here to unplug. Kevin laughed. Yeah, Nick, that sound you hear? That's nature, trees breathing. Darren said nothing. He liked these quiet moments between jokes. The night pressing in, but not too close. Wind shifting high in the branches. The faint scurry of something moving through the leaves. Then, a twig snapped. He heard it, but said nothing. Out here, everything breaks a twig eventually. Nick sighed and set his phone down. Guess I'll just, he stopped, frowning at the screen. What? Darren asked. I didn't touch it, but the camera came on. Front-facing, like selfie mode. Kevin chuckled. Maybe it wants you to actually look at yourself. Nick held the phone up so they could see. The screen looked wrong. Dimmer than normal. Grainy, but sharp. The firelight looked pale. The shadows darker, too dark. Cool effect, Darren said. I didn't download anything, Nick muttered, tapping the settings. It says, Night Mode Plus, never seen that before. Darren shrugged, just a phone trick. But suddenly the firelight felt smaller. Like it pulled in tight around them. The darkness outside the circle grew heavier. Kevin started talking about football. Nick kept fiddling with his phone. Darren's eyes drifted to the tree line. For a second, he thought he saw something. A shape. Paler than the darker than the shadows around it. Taller than the brush. Kevin laughed at his own joke. Nick swore about his battery. And Darren told himself it was nothing. Just the forest playing tricks. The night went on. The fire burned lower. And somewhere in the dark, something moved with the faintest of sounds. Nick's fingers flew over the screen. He swiped through settings he'd never seen before. Look at this, he said, voice low. There's a mode called Night Mode Plus. It's not in the manual. Kevin and Darren leaned in. Nick tapped it on. The screen flickered. The firelight changed. At first, it looked the same. But then, a pale shape stood just beyond the fire's glow. Still, silent, watching. Darren's heart skipped. Did you see that? Kevin squinted. Probably smoke, or a shadow. Nick kept the camera trained on the figure. It didn't move. Then Nick looked away for a second to check the battery. When he looked back, the figure was closer. Closer than before. Closer than it should have been. Darren swallowed hard. This isn't right. Maybe it only moves when we're not looking, Kevin whispered. Nick aimed the camera back. The figure froze. Darren's breath hitched. Don't look away. But the battery was draining fast. 10%, 8. Outside the firelight, the pail waited. And they knew. They moved whenever the camera looked away. There was no way to watch all of them at once. The night was closing in. And the pale were coming closer. The fire was almost out. The night had grown colder. Darren gripped the phone tight. The screen glowed weakly. 5%, Nick whispered. Kevin's face was pale in the fading firelight. No signal, no help. Outside the circle, the darkness pressed in. The pale were there. Waiting. Darren kept the camera on the nearest figure. The pale creature stood perfectly still. But Darren couldn't watch everywhere at once. When he shifted the phone, other shapes appeared. Closer, watching, waiting. Battery's almost dead, Darren said. His voice trembled. Kevin reached for his phone. But it was dead. No, Nick said, eyes wide. They don't just move when the camera is off. They move when it's not on them. Darren swallowed. The pail circled. The fire flickered and slowly died out. Darkness swallowed everything. And then, nothing. Days later, a new group of campers found a phone lying by the trail. The screen lit up bright and clear. Battery at 100%. No calls, no messages. Just one app, labeled Night Mode Plus. They pressed the icon. And the pail waited.
Hey, you see that? Mark's voice breaks the quiet of the trail. He's standing a few steps ahead, one boot nudging something half buried in wet leaves. The three of them had been hiking for hours, the sun dipping low enough that the trees were already throwing long shadows across the dirt path. A breeze wound its way through the pines, carrying the smell of damp earth and old wood. Looks like a book, Jenna says, crouching down. Her fingers brush away the leaves to reveal a leather cover, cracked and swollen from years of moisture. The edges of the pages are dark, almost brittle. Aaron joins them, dropping his pack with a thud. What are the odds it's just a love diary from some hiker? Bet it's nothing. Only one way to find out, Mark says, prying it open. The paper is yellowed, the handwriting small and tightly packed, as if the writer didn't want to waste a single inch. There's no name inside, just the words Day 1 scrawled at the top of the first page. He reads aloud. Day 1, the woods are quiet. Too quiet. It's easier to hear the small things when the forest holds its breath. Aaron grins. Alright, creepy diary time. Let's save it for later. By the time they reach their campsite, the last of the sunlight is fading, the treetops burning orange against the deepening blue sky. They work quickly, tent stakes in the ground, kindling gathered, a match struck. Soon the fire is alive, spitting sparks into the night air. Alright, Aaron says, let's see what the mystery book has for us. Mark flips a few pages ahead. The firelight dances across the ink. Day 5. People move differently when they think they're alone. They walk heavier. They breathe louder. They leave pieces of themselves behind without realizing. The fire cracks, sending a pop echoing into the trees. Jenna glances into the shadows before forcing a smile. Probably just someone trying to be spooky. Day 8. If you want to know where they sleep, look for the things they keep closest. The things they can't leave behind. Aaron lets out a low whistle. Somebody had issues. Outside the ring of firelight, the forest has grown still. No wind, no rustling leaves, just the distant drip of water somewhere far off. Mark turns another page. Day 12. The owl call works best. It makes them stop and listen. Once they answer back, I know they're not paying attention anymore. Somewhere in the dark, faint and far away, an owl calls, as if on cue. Nobody laughs this time. The fire had settled into a steady glow, burning low but hot. Shadows rippled against the tree trunks, swaying with every shift of the flames. No one said much for a moment, listening to the faint echo of that owl call fading into the distance. Mark licked his lips and turned another page. Day 15. It's not the sight of them that tells me everything. It's the sound, a zipper opening, a match striking, the scrape of metal against stone when they set down a pot. Once I know their rhythm, I can move without them hearing me. Jenna shifted on her log, rubbing her arms. Feels like they're right here, she muttered. Aaron smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Guy had an imagination, I'll give him that. Mark kept reading. Day 18. I watch their fires die. When the flames are gone, they're blind. Their eyes take minutes to learn the dark, but mine have lived here long enough to see without light at all. The words sat heavy in the air. Somewhere beyond the firelight, a branch snapped, sharp, quick, like something stepping just once before going still again. Aaron turned his head toward the sound, but saw only blackness between the trees. Mark flipped the page slowly. Day 21. If you're quiet enough, you can stand just beyond the reach of their light and they will never know. You can listen to them talk about nothing, laugh about things that won't matter in the morning. Jenna glanced over her shoulder again. Could just be a raccoon, she whispered. Mark didn't answer. He was already reading the next entry. Day 24. I don't rush. I wait. Sometimes I wait days. It's easier when they start to feel safe. That's when they forget to look behind them. The wind stirred, carrying with it the faint smell of wet earth and something sharper, smoke, but not from their fire. Aaron broke the silence. All right, that's enough for tonight. Mark didn't close the book. His thumb rested against the final page that had writing. This one was blank except for the neat, small print at the top. Day 412. The space beneath it was empty, waiting. The campers zipped the tent closed, the canvas muffling the soft hiss of the fire behind them. Inside, the air was warm but heavy, scented faintly with smoke and damp earth. Mark lay on his sleeping pad, journal clutched loosely in one hand. I don't like it, he whispered. Everything about this feels wrong. Jenna shivered, tucking her knees to her chest. It's just the story, she said, though her voice wavered. It's just a story. Aaron's laugh sounded hollow. Yeah, just words. Nothing alive can get in here. Then the forest responded. A faint hoot drifted through the canvas, slow, deliberate, just like the journal described. It wasn't far, it wasn't random, it was meant. Snap, a twig broke near the edge of the clearing. Another snap. The fire outside flickered, though they couldn't see it from inside the tent. Mark swallowed hard. Jenna froze. Even Aaron stopped trying to sound brave. Another hoot, closer this time. Something shifted just beyond the canvas. A soft scrape, then silence. Aaron sat up abruptly, gripping his hunting knife. I'm going to see what it is, he said, his voice low but firm. Before anyone could stop him, he unzipped the tent and stepped into the dark. The flap snapped shut behind him. Silence fell. Then, a scuffling sound. Outside the tent, just beyond the fabric, something moved. Something heavy, something deliberate. Jenna and Mark pressed against the opposite wall, straining to see. Nothing, only shadows, only the darkness pressing in. And then, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching the tent. Slow, careful, soft. Their hearts pounded. They couldn't tell if it was Aaron returning, or something else entirely. The occasional crunch of leaves under boots. A new group of campers wound their way through the pines, searching for a clearing to set up camp. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of moss and wet earth. One of them, Carla, paused, her eyes catching something half buried at the edge of the path. She crouched, brushing away leaves, and pulled out a leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked and swollen from moisture, but it seemed almost too intact. Looks old, she said, flipping it open. The pages were filled with small, precise handwriting, each entry marked by a simple day number, day 1, day 5, day 8, all the way to the last page. Her friends crowded around as she flipped to the end. A single day number marked the final page, day 415. She blinked. Beneath it, the page was blank, empty, waiting. One of her friends, trying to sound casual, said, "Why don't we just take it with us? We can read it by the fire tonight. Could be fun." Carla hesitated but nodded. "Yeah, let's do it. Might as well know the rest of the story before bed." The journal was carefully tucked into her pack. They continued down the trail toward their campsite, unaware that the forest around them had already grown still, holding its breath, waiting for the next entry. And somewhere, beyond the trees, the faint echo of an owl hoot answered.
I don't go into the woods after dark anymore. Not after that night. My dad's coat was heavy on my shoulders. Old canvas and wool, worn thin at the elbows. It still smelled faintly of the wood smoke he loved so much. The kind of smell that wraps around you like a memory you can't shake. He'd worn it for 30 years. I'd only started wearing it after the funeral. Some part of me thought, if I had the coat on, maybe I could hunt like him. Maybe I could be like him again. The coat felt heavier that night than it ever had before. Not just the weight of the fabric, but the weight of everything it stood for. That night was my first time alone. Just me, the rifle, and the moon. I picked a spot 50 yards off the trail, downwind from a clearing where I'd seen deer before. The earth beneath me was soft and damp, the needles of pine crunching faintly underfoot. I sat on a fallen log, rifle resting across my knees, the cold air stinging my cheeks and creeping through the thin leather gloves I wore. For a while, there was only the night. The whisper of wind through the branches. The soft croak of a distant frog. The faint rustle of leaves skittering over the forest floor. The way the moonlight pulled in the clearing, silver and pale, like spilled mercury. It was peaceful, almost. And then it hit me. That feeling. Like someone had stepped into the clearing and locked eyes on me. I couldn't see them, but I knew. You ever been in a crowded room, and felt someone staring? Not just glancing, really staring, like they're looking through you. That's how it was. It didn't go away, minute after minute, it only got worse. The hairs on my neck stood up. My hands slicked with sweat on the rifle stock. My heart thumped loud enough I was sure it echoed in my ears. My breath came short and sharp. I told myself to stay calm, to be patient, that it was just nerves, or maybe an animal. But I knew I was being watched. Finally, I told myself I'd move. Just 50 yards. No big deal. I stood carefully, slung the rifle, and moved slow. Each step deliberate, careful not to snap a twig or crunch a leaf too loud. The forest floor was soft but uneven, roots twisting like snakes beneath the thin blanket of pine needles. When I reached the new spot, I crouched behind a thick stump, trying to slow my breathing. My heart still hammered against my ribs like a trapped animal. 5 minutes later, it came. A shape slid out of the tree line into my old clearing. At first, I thought it was a man, but it was wrong. It moved wrong. Hunched low, like it didn't want to be seen. Its arms were too long, swinging loose at its sides with a jerky, unnatural rhythm, like they didn't belong to it. Its head was bald, pale under the moonlight, like the skin had been stretched too tight. It sniffed the ground where I'd been sitting, slow, deliberate, like a dog searching for a scent. Then it tilted its head back. I thought, here comes a howl. But instead, in the darkness, a woman's voice cut through the silence. High, clear, terrified. Help, I'm injured. I gripped the rifle so hard my knuckles went white. If I hadn't seen it myself, I would have sworn there was a woman out there, trapped and scared. But I saw it, and I knew. I backed away, step by step. My boot caught on a root, and I stumbled. Dad's coat snagged on the thick underbrush. In a panic, I shrugged it off, leaving it tangled in the sharp thorns. As I tore through the thicket, branches clawed at my face and arms, tearing my shirt and scratching my skin raw. I didn't realize what I'd done until it was too late. I glanced back over my shoulder. The thing moved into the new space I'd been standing. It sniffed again. This time, it lingered. And when it spoke, my blood turned to ice. It was my father's voice. Gravelly, calm, the voice that used to call me in from the woods as a boy. Son, over here. I broke my temporary paralysis and turned and ran. Branches whipped my face and tore at my skin. The forest floor disappeared beneath my feet. Roots snagged my boots, leaves and mud slicked underfoot, but I kept moving. The voice came again behind me. Son, help, I'm hurt. Closer now. Somewhere along the way, something slipped from my pocket, my wool cap. I knew the second it hit the ground, but I couldn't stop. Couldn't turn back. Then I heard it. My own voice. Perfect. Help, I've been attacked by an animal. I didn't look back. Not once. The trees began to thin. The moonlight stretched out ahead, revealing the worn dirt road. My truck was there, headlights dark in the night. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking too badly to be steady. Got inside, slammed the door, locked it tight. The silence pressed in on the windows, heavy and thick. I took a deep breath and turned the ignition. The engine roared to life, a lifeline in the dark void. But just before I shifted into gear, I heard it again. My voice. Soft. Just outside the glass. Come back, I need help. I slammed my foot on the gas and tore down the dirt road, the trees blurring past like ghosts in a nightmare. That's why I don't go into the woods after dark anymore. And if you're ever out there, and you hear someone calling for help, you'd better pray it's human. Thank you for hanging around until the end of our tale. Every view is appreciated. If you have enjoyed it, please hit that like button and considering commenting and subscribing.